So the question that was asked is, what is emptiness? Okay, so this is not a particularly easy thing to describe. It's a word used in yoga, and it really means empty of form. Okay, empty of form. So it's being able to see the world beyond form. Now, form is actually a kind of layer that the mind puts on reality. And along with form is name. Every form has a name. Form in Sanskrit is rupa, and name is nama. And quite often you'll see the two written together in text, nama rupa, name and form. And so what the mind does is that we perceive things, and then it starts identifying objects, and it'll give the object a form and a name. So this is a mountain, this is a tree, this is a river, this is an ocean. And rivers and oceans are interesting because if you see a river flowing into an ocean and you start to try to think, where does the river end and the ocean begin, you start to realize that there isn't actually a point where one ends and one begins. Or you could do the same with, where does the Atlantic Ocean end and the Pacific Ocean begin? Below Chile, there's no line on top of the water. And countries are the same. If you went to the border of France and Italy, there isn't a line on the ground. It's just fields or forests, and nothing's actually there. So these ideas are basically ideas in the mind. We imagine them to be real. But we imagine these things to be real so strongly that it's very, very hard for anyone to actually begin to see the world beyond form, beyond naming things, what the world is actually like. Seeing things how they actually are is very, very hard. And this is part of the process of awakening, part of the process of spiritual awakening. And one thing I sometimes invite people to do is to think about two trees, because with trees it can be a bit more obvious what's actually going on. So if you go into a forest and you see two trees, we all know what a tree is and we all know what two trees are. But there aren't actually two trees there. What there actually is a flow of energy. We know there are roots in the ground, even though we can't see them. We might be able to see some of them. But the roots are continuously taking nutrients up into the tree. The tree is continuously using carbon dioxide from the air as part of photosynthesis in order to build new leaves. Part of the tree might fall off, a branch might fall off, and when that decays into the ground, and then the nutrients from that branch get taken up by the other tree and become part of that tree. Maybe one tree is an apple tree, and an apple falls to the ground, decomposes, gets taken up by the other tree. So what's actually happening is a continuous flow of energy. It's not just flowing between the two trees. An animal comes along, maybe an animal eats one of the apples on the ground, and then the animal dies. The animal rots into the soil, gets taken up into the tree as nutrients. So the animals, the plants, even the sunlight, even the rain, this is all part of the same flow. And that's actually what's really there, is a flow of energy. And then we come along and we say, that's a tree, that's a fox, that's a raindrop, and we put names on things and we put form on things, nama, rupa. But it's actually possible to see the world beyond form. And when we start seeing it beyond form, we see it empty of form. So this is seeing the true emptiness of reality, empty of form. And when we see this, it's actually incredibly beautiful. If we're walking through a forest and we start seeing beyond form, so we're not seeing a branch or a leaf or a river or a squirrel, we're seeing beyond these limited constructs of the mind, and we actually start seeing the whole thing in its pure form as an energetic vibration, and it's an absolutely extraordinarily blissful and ecstatic experience. And of course we're also part of that. We're not separate from that. Our own bodies are part of this energetic flow. We can also pick up an apple and eat it. We can also die and decompose and be taken up by the roots of the tree. We also breathe out carbon dioxide, which is then used by the tree to make its structure. So we're actually also a part of this energetic flow that is happening in emptiness. So how can we use this? How can we make use of this in a useful way as part of our spiritual practice? So this is something that can be done. There is a prerequisite for this. The prerequisite is inner silence. And inner silence doesn't mean the mind has to be completely silent. Inner silence is a state of mind where thoughts can still be there, but there's no attachment, there's no aversion, there's no attempt to hold on to them, no attempt to push them away, and no process of identification with them. So when the mind is in that still, calm state, we can start to use this notion of emptiness in a useful way. And we can actually spend time every day deliberately questioning the structure of form and the structure of name, and deliberately seeing what is actually there beyond name and form, simply being with what is, noticing the flows that are happening. And this is easier to do in nature than it is in something like a house, but it's also possible in a house. But my advice would be start off in nature, because nature is constantly in flux. The leaves are literally falling from the tree as you watch. The rain is falling on the ground as you watch. The rain is becoming the stream. The leaf is rotting into the soil. It's becoming the nutrients for the tree. The water is literally evaporating off the grass, off the leaves, becoming the cloud. The whole thing is literally in motion in front of you. So being in nature, spending time in nature, observing the formless nature of reality, observing the empty quality of existence is a useful thing to be doing once we have some inner silence established in the mind. And if you're drawn to make a practice out of this, my recommendation is start gently. Start with 10 minutes a day, where you're sitting somewhere quietly or walking in the forest, and you're deliberately engaging with this practice. And then maybe after a week or so, you could expand it to 20 minutes a day, and then to half an hour a day, like that, building up slowly over time. If the practice doesn't seem to make any sense to you, if you're just seeing trees and rivers and raindrops, then that's probably a sign that it's too soon. And then focus on meditation practice. Deepen your inner silence during your meditation sessions, and then after 6 months or a year you could try again with emptiness practices. This is quite an advanced stage practice in yoga, but it is part of the process of coming to recognize the truth and seeing the true nature of reality as oneness or unity.